Our candidate forum that we're hosting for the Peoria Unified School District this evening. I'm thrilled to have you join us as we hear from our 6 candidates seeking the 3 open seats for our school board. My name is Rhonda Carlson. I'm President and CEO of the Peoria Chamber of Commerce. We are a nonprofit membership association that serves as an advocate for business, but we also want to make sure that we are informational. So we value the importance of getting voter education out there, and that's why we're hosting this event today. I've got 2 boys in the district too, so I'm very interested to hear from the candidates this evening and look forward to just continuing to share information about our school district. It's a critical time for Peoria. We, in addition to having this election next month, you'll also have another issue on the ballot, and that is our school bond. And so we encourage you to learn about the specifics of that school bond measure. That's not a tax increase. And anyone that's here this evening in person, we're happy to get you some signs if you would like to promote that school bond for us. As the West Valley remains the fastest growing region in the nation, it is critical to ensure we have the right leadership and resources to support student success and a robust pipeline for talent development. I encourage you to thoughtfully and respectfully learn about the candidates here today, as well as, again, the school bond that we've got on the ballot. Thank you to Phil Haldiman, editor of the Peoria Independent, that will serve as our moderator this evening. To the Peoria Unified School District and their continued partnership with our chamber, we greatly appreciate that. And to all of you that are here and joining us virtually this evening, we appreciate you being invested in Peoria and really caring about the future of our district. Without further ado, let's get started, and I'm going to turn it over to Phil Haldiman to start introducing the candidates and asking some great questions this evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Rhonda. As she said, I'm the senior news editor at the Peoria Independent, and I will be the moderator. There are, as she said, 3 seats open, and come January, 3 of the candidates here will have been elected. But today we have 6 of them, all 6 of them, which is really great. So I would like to please welcome Janelle Bowles, Micah Dyer, Melissa Germscheid, Rebecca Proudfit, David Sandoval, and Jeffrey Toby. So I'll let you know a little bit about the rules. There will be each candidate will be given 1 minute to introduce themselves, and then we'll follow with the questions. All candidates will have an opportunity to answer each questions. And we do have a pretty big field of candidates here, so I'm going to try and get through as many of the questions as possible. I just ask that you try and hold your applause till the end so we can try and get through all those questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question, and if a rebuttal is needed, that candidate will be given 60 seconds to respond. And finally, at the end of all the questions, we will have each candidate will give a brief 1-minute closing remark. And I think let's start the discourse. So let's start with introductions, and we'll start with Janelle.
Running the microphone is going to be my biggest challenge, I think. Janelle Bowles. I worked in the Peoria Unified School District for 9 years. I was a behavior specialist while in the district, so worked with the kids with discipline issues or special needs. I've been a taxpayer in this district for almost 20 years. Raised 3 children in the district, was very involved in their education and volunteered and, you know, you name it, everything in between, bringing cupcakes to doing skeletal vegetable things in kindergarten, but been involved in the district for quite a while. Thank you.
Mr. Dyer.
Well, good evening, everyone. I want to start by thanking Phil, the chamber, my candidates, and everyone who's here in person and watching online this evening. I think tonight you're going to hear a stark contrast between myself and my fellow candidates. The first time I attended a school board meeting was my freshman year of high school, and I did so because the political polarization that was happening on the school board was impacting me and my fellow classmates in the classroom. And so I continued to attend throughout high school, and I found that oftentimes the adults in the room weren't acting like it. And that experience led me to join the Peoria Youth Advisory Board, where I served as chair and Peoria Youth Council liaison and became a leader in local government. And in pairing that with the wonderful education I received in PUSD, I'm now at ASU studying secondary education as a Flynn Scholar. So tonight, I hope you begin to understand that what PUSD needs is a student, a future educator, and a community leader to bring us into the next generation of leadership. Thank you.
Melissa Giermscheid.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Grimscheid. I'm a 17-year National Board Certified Physics teacher. 10 of those years were here in the district, both at Park Ridge Elementary and then at Centennial High School. My husband and I have lived in Peoria Unified for about 24 years. We've raised 2 kids who went through Peoria schools, kindergarten through senior year of high school. And I was fortunate during that time to be a volunteer, to be an education support professional. I was a library professional at Park Ridge Elementary, and then to be a classroom teacher at Centennial High School. I served on calendar committees. I've written curriculum for the district. I developed new courses, and I was fortunate enough to be part of the teacher panel for one of the superintendent searches. And you know, my children got a really good education here in Peoria, and so I'm here to give back to my community and make sure that all Peoria families have that opportunity.
Rebecca Proudfit.
Hi, my name is Becky Proudfit, and I have had the honor of serving on the board for the last year. I was appointed last November to the board, and I have had the honor of serving as the board president since January. It has been a great learning experience. I am a mom of 4 very diverse kids in the district. One of my children has special needs. We have varying levels of academic success in our family, and so I completely understand the comprehensive nature of educating all children within the public school system. I was very, very involved as a parent when my kids were younger on the classroom level, because with the little time I had, that was where I wanted to put my time. As my kids got older, I was able to bring some of my organizational leadership background to the boardroom, and looking forward to continuing to give back to our community. Thank you.
David Sandoval.
Yes, good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and yes, thank you, Mr. Haldiman, Peoria Chamber, and everybody who's attended this evening. It is important to be informed, so absolutely appreciate your wanting to be engaged and learn more about the candidates who are going to sit in this very, in my mind, prestigious role, an important role. I've sat on the governing board this is my 2nd term, and you know, have really a deep, rich history in the city of Peoria with my mom's family graduating from Peoria High School in the late 30s, early 40s, and my wife graduated from Cactus, our kids from Park Ridge. But look, I understand governance and policy, and it's not, you know, I gotcha moment or a personality contest. It is about people. I'll continue to lead in this role and serve everybody, you know, in a way that they deserve, and all centered around student success, ensuring that every student has an opportunity to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Jeffrey Toby.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for hosting again. This is a great forum to share our ideas, and I hope that you guys take away what we're all about. I am the public safety candidate. I am the only candidate endorsed by the Police Association because they believe in my ability to keep our district safe. So I'm a husband here in Peoria. My wife is in the military. She outranks me professionally and at home. But we have 4 beautiful children, 1 in college and 3 that have to make their way through Peoria Unified. So I'm invested. You know, I believe that we as a community deserve to send our kids to a safe school and to get a quality education for a reasonable cost for the taxpayer. And that's been my platform the whole time. I've been consistent about that. And so I ask for your vote this November, and vote early. But I appreciate the time to be able to earn your trust and your vote. Thank you.
All right, thank you, candidates. We'll start with the first questions. That's going to go to Micah Dyer. And that question is, name one thing the district is doing well and one point of improvement and how it could be improved.
Yeah. Well, I've had such the honor of attending PUSD from kindergarten to 12th grade. And there's so many wonderful programs that exist. I had the opportunity to be part of the marching band and international baccalaureate program at Ironwood High School, which gave me an amazing, well-rounded education that allowed me to then receive the Flynn Scholarship. And it's that program, such as the MET Academy and the wonderful CTE courses that we have throughout the district, that allow our students to find something that they're passionate about, which is so wonderful. I've found that, you know, one thing that we can improve within the district, when I'm out knocking doors, people talk to me about how we can level the playing field throughout the district. I went to Ironwood High School, and I remember a story. We went to another school for a marching band competition, and just some of my friends told me, why does the stands fall apart or they don't fall apart like at my high school. They have a turf field that's easier to march on. They're able to go to the bathroom because it's not run down like at our school. And it's those little things that kids put in their mind and say, why am I lesser than somebody at another school in the same district? So it's looking at ways that we can level the playing field from our Title I campuses to our campuses in wealthier areas, and ensuring every single student who is in the Peoria Unified School District receives a world-class education like I did. PUSD is amazing. Both my brother and I went through the program and have had such wonderful educators who have now inspired me to go back into the classroom. And hopefully one day set roots in Peoria, Arizona, and begin to be an educator in this district as well, and continue to provide the amazing resources and lessons that so many people did to I. And that's what's beautiful about the Peoria Unified School District and about public education. Any student who comes into our classroom, we educate them to the best of our ability. And so I hope to continue to do that, put away the political polarization and culture wars that have shrouded this district for the past years and are impacting students. That's what we have to realize, and actually move forward with the next generation of leadership. Thank you.
Ms. Grimscheid, name one thing the district is doing well and one point of improvement and how that could improve.
Yeah, I walk past the evidence of what our district is doing well every single day. My house has framed artwork from my students all over it. I think that the arts programs in Peoria are a shining beacon of hope for our district. We can see every year at the Peoria Arts Festival the good work that our arts educators are doing. As a physics teacher, I saw it every day in my classroom that I would mention concepts and be able to tie it right back to what my students had done, that I knew that they had done in their elementary art classes, and they remembered those things. So our arts educators, for those watching, you do a phenomenal job, and I think that that's really, it's a strength of our district. The fact that we have students who are applying what they learn in one of the specials they might get every 6 days in elementary school and remembering it in high school and able to use it for academic growth. One thing that I think that Peoria could do a much better job of is engaging families from across the district. I know that we have, and I used to be one of those, I was a regular at board meetings, and we have our regulars at board meetings. Which is great, because we have people who are coming and wanting to know a little bit more about what's going on in the district. But I want to see that the district would go out to sites, and not just out to the high schools, because I know that's really popular. As a high school teacher, I would say it, that we focus a lot on the high school clusters. I would love to see the district go out to the elementary schools and engage parents and have great two-way conversations. I think that's one area that we have a lot of opportunity for growth in, is just engaging parents across the district.
Ms. Proudfit, same question. Name one thing the district is doing well and one thing that could be improved.
I'm going to take this question in a little bit different direction. As I was a parent sitting back, dealing with things within my house, I would definitely watch the board meetings, not come to the room unless I needed to be there. One thing I saw was something Mr. Dyer referenced, which was the politics kind of just shredding the district apart. Also, what I saw was how those politics created complete stagnation. And there was a disconnect between what I saw happening in my kids' schools and what I was hearing about in the boardroom. And so I think that our community is both a strength, and there is a lot of room for us as community members. There's a lot of room for us to improve, which is great news because it's something all of us can do whether we're on the board or not. I think we need to be very careful how we problem solve, and the example we set for our students with conflict resolution. When I came in, my first public comment I gave was about the bond and how important the bond is, watching the bond go through and begging them to put the bond on the ballot so that it could solve a lot of problems for our district. As we go through that again, as community members, like I said, we need to be careful how we treat each other. The example that we set for our children in conflict resolution, and we have a passionate community. 28 people showed up and applied for the job. We have 6 great qualified candidates here. We have a great community, and now we need to unite that community and learn to work together more effectively.
Mr. Sandoval, name one thing the district is doing well and a point of improvement.
Gosh, again, like I said, I've been on this board for 2 terms, and there's a lot of great things going on, but I'll say this, I think for me, it's the district's intentionality in meeting all of our students where they are. I mean, as a district, over half of our sites are Title I schools. We have McKinney-Vento, foster kids, students with special needs, high-performing students, student athletes. We have upwards of 35,000 young stories throughout the district. And you can tell a lot about what an organization values by looking at its books. And you look at the district's books, whose business offices team has been highly decorated, all those dollars being appropriated into the classroom and making sure that it integrates programs, resources, services, ensuring that, again, all of our students have an equitable opportunity to be successful. A couple things. One thing that I think we can be better at, we're getting there, is really talking about all the great things that we do. I know from a communications perspective, the big push there is making sure that all of our parents are informed, but the impact that the Thriving School District has on our communities, especially, not especially, but when you take a look at our communities who don't have children in their homes, I think that's where relationships with those homes, I think is mission critical as we take a look at going out for the bond, M&O override. But I think that's where we're on a good trajectory, but I think we'd be better at really just, telling our story in a confident way and building on those relationships in those communities who don't have children.
Thank you, Mr. Sandoval.
Thank you.
And Jeffrey Toby, name one thing the district is doing well and something it can improve on.
Yeah, so I've always said from the very beginning, since I've kind of stepped into Peoria Unified, we moved to Peoria Unified from El Mirage for the district. And one thing that's always been a crown jewel of our district is our CTE programming. We do a phenomenal job with the Met. We do a phenomenal job with all of our career and technical education programs. And that's something I'd like to see expanded on even more so. We're supposed to prepare our students to be able to be successful day one. And what a great idea to have a CTE program where kids can graduate with certifications in certain fields, not have any debt, and go out into the world and make an impact. So I think that's one thing that Peoria has done marvelously. I try to encourage one of my kids to do the new global business program at the Met. I think is phenomenal. I know it's in its second, almost third year. She didn't want to split campuses, but that's okay. One thing, academically speaking, I've always harped on is reading comprehension and reading proficiencies, and this is going to delve into what I think we can do better as a district. There's several studies out there that say that reading comprehension and reading literacy as a whole raises all subject matters. So if we want to say we want to raise our proficiency rates in math and English and all of the other subjects, we need to focus on reading, specifically kindergarten through third grade. That's the foundation of where they develop reading abilities and reading comprehension. And there's something called the Matthew effect, which I'll just share real briefly. So if students read proficiently at the third grade, at grade level, they will continue to show improvement, typically speaking. The Matthew effect also says the opposite is true. If we don't have students reading at grade level by the third grade, they will actually continue to decline in their schooling as they go. So I do think that we need to support our teachers when it comes to reading intervention and phonics programs, so that way we can ensure our students' success. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Toby. Second question goes to Ms. Grimscheid. The POS. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, what? Oh, I'm sorry, Janelle. Go ahead. I apologize.
No problem. I'm going to piggyback off what Mr. Toby said. As far as reading goes, across the board, it affects poverty. It affects so many things, and we're struggling. We're struggling with reading. We need reading interventionists. We need some things in the district that we've had before. Like some have already spoken to, I've had children in the district for many years, worked here, and this was a district many people moved to. When we moved here, we couldn't find a house. They were going like 3 days and they were off the market. And it was because of the school district, of course, housing, but it was because of the school district. So I'd like to see that back again. I think we can do that again, working together and collaborating. One of the ideas I will bring out is using what works and not recreating the wheel. And some of our traditional schools have reading programs we can pilot cost effectively into another school that's low performing. And then the other, what are we doing well at? There's a lot of things I could say to that. I will say this, again, some have said, and I don't remember who, but the scholarships and the programs and the relationship we have with WestMec and CTE programs, it's amazing all the even Westmac now having a special ed department, I didn't know that till just recently, and it's huge, it's amazing. Just the diversity that we have for students is super important, and now being on the board of Sybil B. Harrington scholarships, I'm proud to say that my children got that scholarship all throughout their college years. So there's just a lot of availability in our district for a gamut of different careers and students.
Thank you, Ms. Bowles. Okay, second question, Ms. Grimscheid. Peoria Unified has a $120 million bond on the ballot this year. Do you support it? Do you support it or do you oppose it? Yes or no? And why, basically?
I absolutely 100% support the bond. I served, like I said in my introduction, served on the bond and override PAC in years past, and was able to, through that, see some of the findings of the Citizens Bond and Override Committee, and what they said that our district needed. Years ago when we went out for a bond, we did go out for a bond that included a high school years ago, and high schools are expensive. My high school, where I teach in Avondale, it was $180 million to build. So I am really happy to see that the district chose to not go out for that this year so that we can get this bond passed and get the repairs that our schools need this time around. Speaking to voters at doors and telling them that we're going to fix things like roofing, plumbing, heating, venting, air conditioning, fixing our windows, making sure our students have updated technology. Some of the comments that I get are really entertaining, like, why have we been waiting this long? Capital funds are an issue in the state. There has been a lawsuit moving its way through. Capital funding is something that we are significantly lacking in our Arizona public schools. And so bonds are the way that school districts can get that funding to do that. And unfortunately, until we fix the way that schools are funded at the state, this is how we're going to get those repairs done, and this is how we're going to build that new elementary school to take care of some overcrowding.
Thank you. Ms. Proudfit, there's a bond on the ballot. Do you oppose it or support it? Why or why not?
Two hands up, support it. As a parent, the first time I gave public comment was, like I said, in support of getting the bond on the ballot a couple years ago. There's only so much our district can do, and if you look into going to what Ms. Grimscheid said, is the way that schools are financed in the state is very complicated and, in my mind, not ideal at all. That is not the purview of this boardroom, so let's just talk about how it impacts us on the school district. Bonds are how we do that. The district went through incredible lengths to make sure that a myriad of voices in the district were represented on the bond committee. They did incredibly diligent work to be very specific with what that money is for. Top of the list is safety, upgrades to campuses, HVAC, basic things that you would think in Peoria we don't have a problem with, we do. And in some of our schools, we have HVAC issues. How crazy is that to be sending your kid to a school that has HVAC issues? In addition, the overcrowding in the north is another massive issue, which leads to safety concerns, which leads to difficulties for teachers because they're not able to do what they do best because the classrooms are so overcrowded. I absolutely support this bond 100%. It's a very conservative ask for the bond, and they have done the work of ensuring that everybody knows exactly where every dollar is going to be spent. So I have been a big advocate for the bond and will continue to be.
Mr. Sandoval, do you support a bond? Why or why not?
Yes, I do support the bond. I've supported it since I was first elected in 2016, and one of the things I said then was, if we continue to not be able to pass a bond, it's just going to become more expensive in many ways, including what's already been said, impacting the lives that we serve, on a daily basis. It's, like I said, my family graduated from Peoria High School in the late 30s, early 40s, so that's been around for upwards of 140 years. So we have aging schools, without question, and we need to make sure that all of those schools are safe, supportive, and just inspiring environments for all of our students. When we take a look at the growth in Peoria Unified that's been talked about. I mean, we're growing at a high rate in the northern sector of the district. My wife and I, we live in the northern sector, and a bond helps the district uphold its promise to public schools, which is every student every day, regardless of what zip code you live in, you're going to have an opportunity to be successful in Peoria Unified. We need to make sure that our schools across the board, we need to make sure that we're continuing to address the growth in the northern sector and our classroom sizes, which this will impact. We had to actually shut down, some of our open enrollment, some of our sites due to the growth. We're starting to open those back up. But for me, I am proud of the number of families that continue to send their students to our district that are outside of our boundaries. And again, the bond will help us continue to serve all of those young lives in a way that they deserve. Thank you.
Mr. Toby, do you support or oppose a bond? Why or why not?
Yeah, thank you. So I believe the bond is a tool to be able to do certain things that are very specified and outlined and very transparent to the community. And so this bond, I've actually had meetings with several folks, including Dr. Summers, about this bond, because I think that there were some hesitations that I had, honestly, with this bond. So looking back financially, as far as what we have on reserves for our capital, our unrestricted capital funds, classroom site funds, M&O, there are some substantial balances that we carry forward. And obviously, as a conservative, fiscally conservative person, I think it's important that we as a district manage our money appropriately. The question that I have a lot of voters ask me is this really a no tax increase? And when you look at the numbers, it is a tax increase. So on average, the secondary property tax rates are going to be 44 cents for every $100. This bond asks us to go up to 58 cents for every $100 evaluation. That's a 14-cent increase. And so at least that's my public education math talking. So people feel like they're getting the rug pulled out from under them when they see advertisements saying this is a no tax increase bond. So I think the district is doing itself a disservice in marketing, talking about communication with the public and sharing our good stories. I told Dr. Summers, I say, we have a marketing issue here. Is 14 cents for every $100 an unreasonable ask? No, I don't think it's necessarily an unreasonable ask because it's a tool to accomplish certain specified things. There are several proposals online that talk about what proposals this bond is supposed to accomplish, and at one point it was for more money to remodel bathrooms and safety. Now the bond's asking for $16 million to do safety measures and complete safety measures from 2 years ago, but we're sitting on $66 million unrestricted capital funds. That makes me angry as a dad that we're dangling our student safety to try to get this bond passed. And so to me, it's an integrity issue, Phil, that we are not being honest and transparent, and I think that we need to do better as far as communicating that message.
Ms. Bowles, same question. Would you support or oppose a bond? Why or why not?
Thank you. I will first say I'll support, as a board member, I'll support the voters, whatever they decide on the bond. I'm kind of on the fence about the bond. On one hand, I know I walk almost 100 doors a day, no joke, and I hear our constituents saying, about the tax and other things you've heard, and what does that mean? Well, what I know that means is, while we might be saying 8%, we're not going to increase that, my value on my home goes up, therefore my taxes go up. I've lived in Peoria long enough to realize that. I think the money is needed. I would agree with Mr. Toby I'm very concerned that we have safety issues in our schools. Everyone in the room agrees with that. We have taken care of a few of those, like taking care of front office things, but if my child's not safe, why are we spending money right now that we have on building buildings? I know they're needed. I know the buildings are needed. I think the figures are 47% comes from, bonds or the community and our budget, and 45 I think comes from state, and about 8% comes from federal government. So I know it's needed. It's I don't know if I would use the word Mr. Toby uses, integrity. I would probably say, where are your priorities? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dyer, same question about the bond.
I will be voting yes on the PUSD bond, and I encourage each and every one of you listening here and online to vote yes alongside me. And I'm going to highlight a few different things. One, like some of the other candidates alluded to, we had a committee and a council formed of teachers and educators, community leaders, business people throughout the community that came together and said, this is what we need for the bond, this is how much we're asking for, and this is why we need it. We're asking for a very conservative amount, like a few other of my candidates mentioned, but why? We need to do this because the Arizona State Legislature has for years underfunded public education in this state. So this is a way that we can go forth and talk to our voters about how we can continually improve and innovate within our district. What is the bond going to do? It's going to improve safety and security, and that means a lot of different things. It's going to improve hard infrastructure, putting up fences and gates so we understand who is on our campuses and that no one can just get on campus. That's important. We need to improve the cameras and vape sensors that we have, improve the plexiglass in our front offices so that all of our members of our community and everyone in our schools are safe. It's going to improve transportation. It's going to improve technology, investing in technology so our students are prepared for the next generation when they're going out into the workforce after high school. It's going to build a new school in the northern sector of our district, which will allow to solve the problem of the overcrowding we've seen. I went to Sunset Heights Elementary from third grade to 8th grade, and when that school opened, it was full immediately. And we see that we need to build new schools because of the continuous growth. Then I went to high school at Ironwood, and I saw this campus built in the 1980s. Some of our campuses older necessitate some improving infrastructure. We need to invest in our schools so that every single student in our classrooms has the opportunity to learn at the highest level. And again, I'll repeat, there is no tax increase. Strong schools leads to a strong economy and a strong community. And I don't think any of us can say no to that.
Thank you, Mr. Dyer. Third question will piggyback on this bond question. It's going to be started by Ms. Proudfit. That question is, the district faces overcrowding in some schools in the north and some schools in the south are under capacity. If this year's bond does not pass, what steps would you take to better use the district's facilities? Ms. Proudfit.
That is a very, very complicated question. There is a lot that can be done. We have had conversations on the table for reallocating some of the under-enrolled schools in the South for, gosh, almost a decade these conversations would be happening. So I very strongly have advocated for reconvening that committee and beginning those conversations again. I'm someone that doesn't like to act out of reaction to things. I want to have plan A, B, and C and have it laid out so we know what is going to happen to provide stability for our students. I think there's a lot of opportunity within our district to reallocate some of the South campuses. If we look at, say, Peoria Traditional, that is a school that's in the north. Again, it's a school that has a wait list a mile long. Well, if we're providing a service for students in the north and giving them the opportunity under the district umbrella to have a charter school experience, then we need to be giving that experience to children in the south. And that would be one way that we can reallocate a school in the south to do so. But I say the first step would be definitely to reconvening that committee. I just wanted to say one more thing. As we look at our district, we are an extremely financially conservative district. Someone alluded to, we're an award-winning district for that. And that is crucially important because it provides stability for our students. Regardless if a bond passes, our students are not going to have immediate disruption because of those reserves. We don't ever want to be a district that is a month away from not being able to pay our employees. And so as we look at all these very comprehensive issues, these are all things to take into consideration. Thank you.
Mr. Sandoval, if the bond is not passed, what would you do to address the facilities?
Yeah, no, so very similar to what Ms. Proudfit just stated. We did, I think it was about 2 years ago, we had a committee that went out and took a look at some of our sites in the southern sector of the district to kind of somewhat of a facilities assessment, ADM, which is the number of students, to understand where we can repurpose, some of the sites. But one thing I do want to mention to everybody is, well, we have a large number of families moving into the northern sector of Peoria Unified. Our most recent demographer reports also show that Ironwood and Peoria high schools are both growing as well. So I want to just proceed with caution in how we, really start to repurpose some of these schools, knowing that there are more families and growth happening in that part of the district. That said, it's a lot of tough decisions without question, and I would agree. I mean, from a finance perspective, yes, we have some some carryover dollars. And, but, you know, one of the things that our business services team continues to do as they plan for subsequent academic years is making sure that we're always thinking about what may be coming around a corner, because there are a lot of things that could happen that could strip, you know, upwards of $60 million from the district, you know, in a matter of really months. So we always have to have those reserves in the case that, you know, that takes place. And but yeah, it's being intentional and also bringing back the committee to assess those sites and make smart decisions that are centered around the growth throughout the entire district, because Southern sector is realizing some growth as well.
Thank you, Mr. Sandoval. Mr. Tobey, how would you address facilities if the bond does not pass?
Yeah, so Paradise Valley had this very hard conversation recently, and there's a lot of discussion about it in the media about them shutting down schools. We don't want to get to a point where we are forced, like Mrs. Proudfit said, we don't want to be in a position where we have to react out of haste. So I do think it's smart to get community input, parent voice, and do a committee to decide, do we want to have a Peoria traditional in the north and the south? Or because we have such a great CTE programming, maybe partnering with a Westmec and a joint venture for one of our sites. Because when you see some of the demography reports that came through, where we're experiencing growth is in those CTE programs and in as our expanding Met Center. And so that's what the demand is for. And we as a district need to pivot and adjust to the demand of this district. And I think incorporating all those aspects, parent voices, community voices, and a committee to decide what is best for us as a district and present it to the governing board for final decision. You know, I think that there is also the demographics of us losing students. You know, as of a year ago, we're down 1,000 students. And I think the suggestion was to do an exit survey as to where are all these students going. And I don't know if that's ever been acted on. So I think we should probably gather some more data, give it to the committee, and kind of chew on it for a little bit. And we need to discuss about what is our priority as a district moving forward for the next 5, 10, 20 years. And if that is enhancing our CTE programming to give students that knowledge and that ability to go out day one and get a job and succeed debt-free, that might be the priority that we as a district want to go to. Again, I welcome parent voices and community voices because we work for the community ultimately. So I'd like to hear what a committee would have to say on those issues.
Thank you. Ms. Bowles, same question. If the bond did not pass, how would you address the facilities?
Thank you for the question. There's several ways I would address that. Number one, we've met twice with the city of Peoria for land, and that never came to fruition. So I think working closely with the city of Peoria is one main thing. And someone mentioned about building a traditional school. Pretty sure that's already happening outside of the school district. We are losing students, you know, both in the south and in the north. One of our biggest schools in the south is Country Meadows, probably one of our oldest schools as well. So the other would be grants. I have written grants in the district, been a recipient of grants in the district. We can write grants. They're at the state level right now for safety in our schools. I'd be more than happy to be part of that. There's a lot of grants out there. There's other means of funding some of these things and not relying so much on a bond. But I understand that bonds are needed when they're needed. And the other thing is, I think Mr. Tobey touched on, and that is, if our schools are not full, why not let homeschool groups, a charter school, someone else rent out part of our buildings to save us some money? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowles. Mr. Dyer, please. Facilities.
I hope we don't have to get to this point where the bond doesn't pass. And one thing I wanted to go back on the conversation about the bond is we have land up in the northern part of our district. If we don't build a school on it in the next 4 years, we're going to lose that land that we already have. So we cannot go forward and pass the bond just because when we already have something there and spend more money going down the line. So I wanted to go back. But on the conversation of if that happens, we don't pass the bond, how can we go forward? I don't think any of my fellow candidates mentioned student voices, which I think is unfortunate. Students are our #1 constituent in the district, and student voices must be part of any decision we make throughout the district. It's a part, it's not everything. We need parent voices, we need community voices, our educators, everyone who holds a stake in this beautiful community that we have here in PUSD. But students are living their day-to-day lives in our I think we forget that these aren't just buildings plopped in the middle of Peoria. These are the hearts of our community. These are places where we sing songs together, where we play music, and where we come together and forget about all the outside noise, but that we educate the next generation of our students. I always like to say that public education to me is the foundation, one of the foundations of democracy. And it's a place where we can all come together and ensure that every young scholar has the opportunity to be the best that they can. So if we get to this point, we need to ensure we include all voices, reconvene the committee, understand where we're at, and also bring in new programs. I don't live within the Ironwood High School bounds. I came to Ironwood High School because of the amazing International Baccalaureate program, like many of my fellow students did. Many of us came into that school to receive an amazing education that PUSD offered. And so I think it's looking at how we can innovate, push forward, bring in the next generation of leaders, and look at what can we do in the classroom to improve the day-to-day lives of our educators and our students and bring people to our beautiful PUSD community.
Ms. Grimscheid, if the bond does not pass, how would you deal with the facilities?
Yeah, this is a great question, considering I have two nephews who are in the Paradise Valley Unified School District and whose school closed this past year. One of them has really struggled. He is a special education student, and so having his school close and not kind of knowing whether the teachers he loved were going with him was a really hard conversation to continuously have with him. And I don't want us to get to that point ever, because I saw what that did to those families. It's really hard on a neighborhood when you kind of lose that neighborhood school. I moved here when I was 10, and before that we lived in really small town Iowa, and the schools were the heart of the community. And when I moved to Arizona, the schools are still the heart of the community. It's hard to lose that heart when you believe so strongly in that. I think that if we're going to do anything, it needs to have neighborhood input. You can't make a decision about a school without asking the parents who send their kids, who chose that school for their children, what they would like to see happen. And maybe that means that we bring in some additional programs to entice people there. We can look at when students withdraw and we are asked to send any records to the new school. We can look at where those new schools are and just kind of see what those new schools are doing to see if we can maybe entice some people back with some programs. I mean, I have a long list of things I would love to see in the district. I would love to see a permanent place for the Family Resource Center. I would love to see a public service academy. I would love to see all sorts of programs, but I think when we make that decision, it has to be with the input of the parents and families who send their kids to those schools. I am 100% opposed to renting out our buildings. It's a safety issue right there, so I will say that is absolutely not on my list.
Thank you, Ms. Grimscheid. Fourth question of the forum goes to Mr. Sandoval. And that question is, what can be done to improve teacher retention in the district?
Yeah, thank you for that. So, one of the things that I am proud of, one of my achievements, really, or accomplishments as a board member in this district is in and around moving the district in a way that it establishes nurturing and inspiring work environments for all of our employee groups. One of the things that I was able to accomplish is, when our teachers retire, they go on ESI for a year, they come back, and they were at 80% of their most recent salary when they came back to work for the district. And one thing to make certain of is our more veteran teachers make a huge difference in our new teachers as they come in from a mentorship perspective, and helping them acclimate into the overall Peoria Unified School District culture. So one of the things I worked on and accomplished, now our teachers come back at 90%, of their most recent salaries. So a couple things, one of the things that we most recently accomplished as we balanced our budget is, increasing our new teacher salaries while valuing our more veteran teachers. The district came to us with a proposal. We sent it back to make sure that there was a balance, between attraction, bringing in, again, new teachers, and making sure that our more veteran teachers feel valued with regard to ensuring that their salaries are such that they continue to grow and feel respected as it relates to their time that they have spent here in Peoria Unified and in nurturing and growing our students. So, yeah, I think it's a balance between attraction and then making sure that, you know, we continue to have inspiring, supportive, and trusting work environments for our associates.
Thank you, Mr. Toby. What can you do to improve teacher retention?
So I have a friend that works in another district that so badly wants to come to Peoria, but he says the pay scale here is the only thing keeping him back. And so for some, it's pay. I mean, the ADE did a survey of over 1,000 teachers that left the workforce here in Arizona. And the top three was, number one was pay, number two was student behavior, and number three was their district administration. So I think we should take that survey to heart and look at, yes, we need to adjust pay and pay teachers accordingly. You know, I go back to a lot of the carry forward funds. I'm not sure how many follow historically the funds here into the district. It's not necessarily the fun as pastime, but since 2020, we've pocketed $8 to $10 million, even a little bit more every year in our classroom site funds and put that into our rainy day fund, which is great. But even if we took a niblet of that to distribute to the teachers, the more senior teachers to keep them here, we had one teacher we were talking to, and they said that they had another teacher brought in at a higher pay step than this more senior teacher. And the response the senior teacher got was, well, you should resign, come back in a year, and then we'll bring you back in at that top step. And that does not communicate fairness or a district that I would want to go work for if that's the kind of response that I got. Again, it goes back to that ADE survey. You know, is it pay and student behavior, but it's also the district administration and how they feel valued as an employee here. Now, student behavior, I understand that we've kind of moved towards a standardized behavior model, and so I think that that's one thing that will help as far as treating all student behavior the same across the district when it comes to discipline and enforcing the rules of our district, and not having each site leader interpret that to themselves and give different discipline for each student. So I also think that teachers need to be supported by just the community. And a lot of the community that we make and the fabric that we make of this Peoria Unified is what probably is going to keep teachers here or not. There's teachers here at Ironwood that have been here longer than I've been walking this earth, right? So this is something that we can address financially, but also as a culture issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowles. How would you address teacher retention?
Thank you. Teacher retention, the veteran teachers are invaluable. I don't think I have to speak to that too much, except we're losing them. We're losing them because everything described already, and that is people coming in that are new that are going to be paid more than someone that's been there a long time. As a board member, I would like to see more constituents, more bridging a gap. I would like to see donations to teachers' classrooms again, meals to teachers' class. They're not hard to please. Teachers need support. It's a thankless job for the most part, and I think most of us in the room know that. But there's plenty of other resources out there as well that I'm very familiar with. But pay is a big deal. It's a big deal. If we're not up training, I don't care what business it is, you're gonna lose business, and you know, students are gonna lose out. There's things we all know. There's a classroom experience. I've taught. I was a behavior specialist. I taught some of the administrators. CPI, crisis prevention intervention. And we know you can learn something from a book. There's classroom experience and then real life experience. Those veteran teachers bring that real life experience that we desperately need in our grade levels, and we need to retain them. Pay, discipline, all of the things that were already mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dyer. Same question. How would you improve teacher retention?
I think I come at this from a unique perspective as a proud son of two educators and someone who's now studying secondary education at Arizona State University. I'm going to talk about a few things. We've talked about teacher pay, but how do we get there? We need to pass an M&O override. Surrounding districts have a 15% override, Deer Valley, Paradise Valley, that allow their districts to pay their educators what they deserve. But unfortunately, PUSD has been unable to do that. We have a 13% override, which doesn't allow us to pay our educators as much as we would like. So that's number one. We need to reconvene that committee in this next year, which I imagine we will, and look at how feasible it is to go forward into the next election and pass an override with the approval of our community. But teacher pay isn't everything. Of course, our teachers need to earn a living of what they deserve, but we need to work on working conditions. There's teachers, if you're teaching in the K-8 classroom, you have maybe 30, 45 minutes to eat your lunch, take your kids to lunch, go to the restroom, and plan your lessons for the whole rest of the day. So we have to look at creative ways that we can lighten the load of our educators. And I think we need to do that by getting a new generation of leadership on the PUSD school board that isn't afraid of taking some risk, innovating, and pushing forward on what the next generation of public education can be. Can we have team teaching models where there's not just in the classroom who has to be everything all the time for one student, but we have multiple educators in a classroom that they're serving the students who might not be understanding the concept. There's a student who is, or a teacher who's serving a student who might be having a problem at home, and they're attacking the classroom and our students at all different angles. So it's looking at multiple ways when we're increasing teacher pay, we're continuing to innovate, we're improving working conditions, and having educators come and sit at the table and ensure that they understand that they have a voice within our district, because this is their livelihood. I'm not going into education to make a lot of money. I know everyone knows that. I'm going into education because I truly care about improving the lives of every single person in the state of Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Dyer. Ms. Gimscheid, what can you do to help improve teacher retention?
Well, it's a great question because I am one of those teachers who left. I think it comes down to three things, and it's pay, workload, and respect. And I've heard from my fellow candidates a lot about pay. I agree with the 15% override. That would make a huge difference. We aren't there yet. That would make a huge difference. But I think the workload and the respect is a huge part of what we need to do. I left in part because I wanted an intellectual challenge, and I'd love to talk to anybody more about that, but I won't get into it. But I think the workload of our teachers really needs to change. It is very commonly known that we have a disparity between prep time for K-8 teachers and high school, and that's why we see a lot of our K-8 teachers make the jump to high school. You get a 90-minute prep instead of maybe 30, 45 minutes while your students are at specials. And so we need to find creative solutions to make sure that our teachers have more prep time, more collaboration time. We've talked a lot about academic achievement. Teachers need time to be able to look at the scores and be able to see where kids are going, or how they are doing, be able to determine their areas of growth, be able to work together, because I may have one specialty and the person next to me may have another, but that collaboration time can't happen with the current status of where teachers are. I would love to see a workload lightened by making sure that we have K through 3 and 4 through 6 reading interventionists, math interventionists. It would be lovely to have an assistant principal at every school that just helped you with discipline. To have a mentor teacher who can help you work through some classroom management issues. Like, all of that goes into workload. And the final thing is respect. And I don't know when public school educators became public enemy #1, but it's really tiring and it really weighs on me. And there are days, and I know I'm not alone, when that constant, from everything from movies that make fun of us to comments in the boardroom, beat us down. Thank you.
Ms. Proudfit, same question. Last question for this.
This is something I'm incredibly passionate about. Like I said, one of the things that brought me to wanting to be in the boardroom was the disparity between how I was trying to help the educators who made such an incredible impact on my children's lives and some of the narrative that's out there about teachers. And it isn't all about, I wish there was a magic wand we can wave. Unfortunately, using reserve funds would, again, be a Band-Aid. And so it's about restructuring how we pay our teachers. I do want to provide like a note of hopefulness, though. We were able to give a small raise, and this is something that we as a district are very, very, very aware of. The eminent override conversation is going to be a big one for next year. But being a business owner, and my husband and I own several businesses, one thing that I've come to understand is that there are non-tangibles in creating corporate culture. Prep periods, making sure that they have a dedicated prep period that's not taken away from them for any reason. Another thing we need to work on doing is beefing up our classified staff, because if we don't have enough classified staff, what ends up happening is a teacher will end up getting pulled into whatever role is missing there. And so we need to do a great job with making sure that our classified staff is there. One thing I'm really passionate about is I really want to start a teacher in residence program within the district. It's something that Deer Valley and Dysart districts both have, but essentially what it is if you have a bachelor's degree and you're interested in getting a teaching certification, you can do that in-house for free with the district in exchange for service to our district, and being able to capture more people in our community who care so passionately about education. Teachers across the board, nationwide, it is a shrinking profession, and we need to do all we can to attract and to retain educators into our district. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move from teachers to students for the next question. It's going to go to Mr. Toby. How do you define student success, and what metrics would you use to measure it?
So we have a lot of different, it's not a one-size-fits-all education model. We're supposed to be able to provide students, the vast cross-section of our community, with the ability to be successful. And we do that through different assessments and tests and whatnot, because that's the metric that we can kind of qualitate all of the data that we have. So, but when kids leave our district and leave our schools, and they go out there and they're being successful, and we hear people, coming back, such as Mr. Dyer coming back and being involved in this community and that reinvestment. There's so many teachers here that used to be students. I mean, we have board members that used to be students here in this district. That speaks to the nature of our district. So, but as far as the overall picture, as far as a snapshot as a student in this district, how are you doing? That's going to be through what we've been able to do and reading, writing, arithmetic, and those assessments that measure those, making sure that they're on track to be prepared for the next level. So unfortunately, I wish there was a magic wand that we could have to know intuitively that every student is going to be successful when it comes to mathematics or whatever the subject matter is. Unfortunately, we have the limitations that we have. And so as a district, we need to use the data to be able to drive our decisions forward. And with our proficiency rates where they're at, that's where I refuse to accept those proficiency rates. We've gone up a little bit, which is a small victory, and I definitely will praise that. But we need to increase this more. Our sister district has over 50% proficiencies in mathematics and ELA. And so I think that should be our goal. We should be able to keep our proficiency rates with our neighboring districts. And maybe they're doing something that's more successful than we are. And that way, that'll translate into student success. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bull, same question. How do you define student success, and what metrics would you use to measure it?
How do I define student success? I worked with many students in the district that were on individual education plans. I think approaching every student as an individual and their education should really be a plan of everyone in the room, teacher, parent, board member, constituent. The success of a student is going to depend on what their desires are as well, knowing your student. And hey, some are, I had students that did their own IEP meetings, and that was probably my most successful meetings. One wanted to be an NFL player. I'm like, I'm pretty sure he's not going to be, but I'm not going to take that from him. He ended up being at Ironwood High School and was a cheerleader and a football player. That was huge success for me. So it doesn't really matter what I view as success. It's really what they view and their family and their dynamics of their family. Of course, we are a public education system, so our proficiencies need to go up. And the only way we can really do that, unfortunately, is with testing and, being more creative, I think, because I actually am not that kid that likes to sit in the desk all day. I don't know if we were really created that way, but kids we know learn by being more involved in their learning. So whether they're looking up their scores or you give them, part of that control of their outcomes, anybody that's worked with a child knows if they won't eat something, I used to make vegetable skeletons and bring them into the classrooms, and they always ate cabbage because it was brains. So them being part of that process is huge. And the family dynamics. I had another student that I'm like, you want to work at Burger King the rest of your life. Keep in mind, I work with behavior kids. And then I would get a picture of a car. We're going to work toward that. It was important in junior high. And I had one student say, I don't really care if I get a job because I have uncles that sell drugs and they make a lot more money than. So success to me doesn't really matter. Success to a district, we got to get our proficiencies up. But overall, we need to know who our students are.
Thank you, Ms. Bowles. Mr. Dyer, how do you define student success, and what metrics would you use to measure it?
So test scores are an important part of the puzzle, but they're not everything. They allow educators to see where students are coming. They allow our educators to see where students are at and where they need to go. but we also have to look at and treating students as human beings in the classroom. And there's a lot more things that go into how a student is being successful that isn't just test scores. And I want to go back on a comment that was made by a candidate. We always like to say we're going to focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic, which is absolutely important. But I myself, as a future history teacher, understand that there's so many other important lessons, history, science, the arts, that allow our students to actually truly find their passion. Math and reading and arithmetic are important to develop the critical thinking skills of our students, but then they get to find their passion after that. I think we also need to get to a point where our educators are incredibly stressed and given a lot of stress by the district because everything relies on test scores. A lot of that comes from the state, but some of that comes from the district. And so the stress of our educators leads to the stress of our students. And not every student is a good test taker. And so we have to understand that. But I think also, how do we get to student success? We need student voice. I'm going to harp on this again and again. Students are our #1 constituent in the Peoria Unified School District. So we have to ensure that student voices are heard and valued in our classrooms. They're heard at the site level, and they're heard throughout the district. I had the incredible opportunity of sitting on the site council for Ironwood High School as a senior. And it was that opportunity that allowed me to truly dive in and become a stakeholder in my own education, giving students something to care for and asking our students who sit in the back of the classroom and aren't engaged, how can we get you engaged? That's what's crucial to student success, is student voice.
Thank you, Mr. Dyer. Ms. Gerbscheid, how do you define student success, and what metrics would you use to measure it?
I'm going to start out by issuing a correction to all my fellow candidates that we do have a statewide test for science. And so science is important, as a science teacher myself. And I want to tell families that your child's test scores don't define them. And I know that can be really hard, and my kids would take it, they're overachievers, and they would take it really hard if they didn't get, they wanted to get 100% on the Ames test. Okay, but if they didn't get 100%, they were really worried about it. And we need to continue to to emphasize that with students. There's a lot of anxiety in schools right now, and those tests raise anxiety significantly. My students are taking the ACT next week, and so they're already starting to panic about that one. I think that what we do need to focus on is the measurement of how we are doing and how our students are doing is growth. How are they doing year after year? So for example, my students will take not only the ACT, but we have students take the pre-ACT next week, and it'll give our teachers a chance to look and see where they are successful, where they can stand to grow, and then we, as teachers, as a department, as school, as a district, can get together and determine how can we help them do better the next year. And that's absolutely what we should be doing as a district for students. We should be looking at how can we help them if they're struggling as a science teacher, if they're struggling in communicating data, then that's something that I'm going to focus on for the next year. And so for our students, we can absolutely do the same thing. And I think there's also pieces of success that have nothing to do with tests. There's our special education students. We have a transition from school to work program. And so seeing where they are after they graduate, I love seeing where they are after you graduate, see some great success. And we can do that for our general education students as well. I think reductions in behavior referrals is a success. Seeing students who are referred to our social worker who work through issues and don't need that support anymore, that is a major success. And so all of those things can be more important than those test scores, which don't define our kids.
Thank you. Ms. Proudfit, how do you define student success, and what metrics would you use to improve it?
I will second what you were saying about anxiety. One of my children is going to be taking that pre-ACT next week, and there has been a great amount of anxiety surrounding this. And so I want to answer this as a parent. How do I define success? Well, education should equal opportunity. Education should offer you the chance to be free. And what I mean is, do you have the tools and then the skills to go out from PUSD and know what your next steps are to create the life that you want? That's what education at the end of the day is supposed to bring us. Some of the most unhappy people I know have great jobs and go down this path and have plenty of money, but that's not really what fulfillment is about. And so I want to know, are our students leaving with the information and tools they need to succeed? One thing I think that we need to really look at in our district is our guidance counselor program. Right now, we're sitting at about 500 to 1. I don't know how any guidance counselor could effectively serve 500 students. And even with my own 4 children, they've had different guidance counselors, and what an impact that position makes in being able to know and understand a child and then point them towards the MET program or the CTEs or the clubs or the student leadership or any of those things that start to help our kids to emerge as leaders in their own life. And so one thing I would love to see is an increase on that focus to even bring that down to 350 to 1, to lessen the load for those guidance counselors so that they can do what they do best and help these kids understand and know that they have every tool that they need within PUSD. I can say that confidently. We are the most comprehensive district with workforce readiness. There is truly 3 programs for any kind of kid out there to find success. And so helping connect the students to that success, I think, is crucially important.
Mr. Sandoval, same question. How do you define student success and what metrics would you use to achieve it?
Yeah, thank you for that. So, a couple things. Peoria Unified continues to outperform all grade levels across the state as it relates to percentage of students scoring proficient or higher in math and ELA and the ACT, okay? We realize constantly a 90-plus percentile in our high school grad rates. Our most recent seniors realized a 30% increase in scholarship dollars awarded. One of our high schools went from $5 million to $21 million. There is a lot of success that is taking place throughout our district. I agree with the statements that have been made around, we do have 35,000+ different stories throughout the district. And when we talk about these numbers, we have to humanize that data as well to make sure that we're meeting students where they are, understanding that we do have our McKinney, Vento, and Foster students, understanding that we do have our high-performing students, and our students who are struggling in the lower socioeconomic zip codes that we have. I mean, our numbers from a free and reduced lunch is increasing a little bit. So once again, student success to me is, yes, the numbers, but it's also their human skills and their confidence as they leave our walls to navigate their own path and be successful. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about a system that we have, which gives real-time feedback, to our teachers around a student's area of challenges and struggles and making sure that we address those immediately versus waiting until the end of the semester. So again, student success, yes, numbers are great, but also growth and human skills. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Next question is going to go to Ms. Bowles. What can you do to achieve a balanced curriculum for Peoria Unified students?
Well, speaking from a board member, because that's what I'm up here for, that would be, again, making sure I'm familiar with the cultures that are in our district and curriculum, what works. We don't need to keep recreating the wheel. I was in the district 9 years, and I'm sure you've heard this before. Not to sound negative, but the truth is we waste millions of dollars on the new shiny penny curriculum that comes through the district. We can add to good curriculum, be creative to the students. There's many ways. If you need help with that, I can do that in my sleep. That's what I did for students. But as far as curriculum, let's use what works. Let's see what's working, and let's start there. That's a good baseline to start. In fact, being behavior specialist background, that you would start where you're successful, right? I mean, that makes sense to me. And so, again, going back to our traditional school that is doing well, and the curriculum, Spalding and math curriculums that work, that we know work. Why are we recreating the wheel when we really don't need to, especially when we're so low in proficiency? We might be the highest in the state. My God, what are we saying with that? We're 40% at reading level. That's failing. That's failing. Let's be honest with ourselves. I'm not blaming anyone for that. It really needs to be a group effort, and I understand that. But we need to hire academics, whatever the cost. We don't need to, be looking at shiny pennies or this or that as far as curriculum goes. And I could name quite a few that I even had in the Midwest that still they're using and they're successful. So adapting to the students' needs is a big deal. Someone mentioned about, socioeconomics or even ELA or ELL, I'm sorry, students, not, English language learners, that's their second language is English. That's a big deal. We've had a lot of avenues when it comes to language in our schools. And I think that's affected a classroom. I think that's affected, curriculum is just curriculum. Students' learning is about students and how you teach, the science
Ms.
of
Bowles.
teaching.
Mr. Dyer, what can you do to achieve a balanced curriculum in PSD?
So I had the great opportunity, as I've mentioned before, of attending the International Baccalaureate program at Ironwood High School. And if you don't know what IB program is, it's similar to AP, but it's kind of the European version. And they pride themselves on providing a holistic, world-class education to the students, ensuring that they're knowledgeable in the areas of math and science and history and English, but also that you learn a second language. I took 5 semesters of Spanish at Ironwood High School. And I also, they pride themselves in that they need you to be involved in an arts program, whether that's being in our choir or the band, or we even have IB art. And so it's ensuring that our students are coming to school and finding their passion. I'm going to say that over and over again. There's 2 things that I think are crucial beyond curriculum, is 1, finding your passion while in high school. School was always an important thing for me. But once I found what I cared about, school became so much more real. And also, the second thing that students need is finding a teacher who cares. I've had incredible teachers throughout junior high and high school that have inspired me to be here today and to go into the teaching profession. But let's talk about curriculum. One way that we can ensure that students are engaging within curriculum is ensuring student voices are heard in the curriculum process. We have a wonderful curriculum review committee that includes parents and teachers and educators and community members, but let's ensure student voices are heard. If the student is sitting in the back of the classroom not engaging in class, it's because they aren't being served by that curriculum. We have to ensure that every student sees themselves in what they're learning. If you aren't able to put yourself in the shoes of another person, then you cannot fully absorb the wonderful information that our educators are providing. So it's about, 1, looking beyond curriculum and how we can ensure our students are being educated to the fullest extent, but also including those student voices within the decision-making process, the curriculum process, and at the site level so that they're engaged in their own education.
Thank you. Ms. Grimscheid, what can you do to achieve a balanced curriculum for PSD students?
Yeah, one thing that I keep hearing, and I feel this is common amongst teachers even too, there's a difference between standards, curriculum, and resources. And so as someone who has created curriculum and created a lot of curriculum for the district when I was here, we start with our state standards. Those are not determined by the school or the district or the teachers. Those are determined by the State Board of Education. From that, we take the state standards and determine where they're going to fit into courses, into our scope and sequence, and that is our curriculum. And then from using that curriculum, we determine what resources need to be used in order to meet those standards. And so I feel as a board member, one of the things that we can do is always solicit teacher input. Because it's very common to get resources that are not helpful for students. When I was here in the district, I had physics textbooks that sat in the back. I locked that cabinet because we could play a game. It was called Find Your Teacher's Names in Your Physics Textbook. And we could find quite a few of them that went to the school because our physics textbooks were bought in like 1991 when the school was opened. And so the first time that new textbooks are that newest science adoption. And so having resources that work, I wasn't using those old textbooks. There was things that had been disproven in there. Having teacher input to be able to say, hey, those resources are not working for my students is invaluable. And part of that means that as a board member, I would love to see that the way that we approve supplemental materials be streamlined. Because when teachers have something that's not working and they know something else that's not on that list would work for their students, they need to be able to, I can't wait months. I need to be able to get those materials approved so I can put them in front of my students so they can meet those standards and be more successful.
Thank you. Ms. Proudfit, what can you do to achieve a balanced curriculum for PUSD students?
I'm going to try to talk fast because there's a lot here. The first thing we do is we create the committees for textbooks, which we try to include every single stakeholder group within the district. And thank you to those volunteers because they are exhaustive as they are looking towards community members to give input about curriculum that they are wanting to adopt within the district. Now, if we have the best curriculum out there and we've done all the due diligence of getting all the stakeholder input, there still is application of that new curriculum. We're kind of coming off of a time where we had a lot of new curriculum adopted, and I think there's a lot of professional development opportunities there. Going to what Ms. Grimscheid said, I think that having that teacher input constantly in that process is absolutely vital to ensure that the resources the teachers are getting are actually impacting classroom success. I think we need to not be afraid to try new things. We're actually trying out a new program at Lake Pleasant. Principal Bagwell brought it to the district, and it is looking to connect teachers to the state standards in a more streamlined way so that teachers can kind of bring the creativity back into teaching. When we give teachers the room to do what they do best, we have success. Teachers feel fulfilled. The students are able to find their passion. And so being able to do what we can do from a district standpoint to allow teachers to do that, for me, is absolutely vital in making sure that we are successful. One thing that the community can look forward to is Dr. Hernandez with Academic Services. She just presented a whole study session on exactly what the check-in procedure is going to be with the community members. And you guys can look out for quarterly reports about where we are moving with academics. And so developing a cadence of reporting and shifting and kind of keeping an eye on that, I think will have a great impact into our upward trajectory.
Thank you. Mr. Sandoval, what can you do to achieve a balanced curriculum for the students?
Yeah, so I mean, to date, the district continues to innovate with regard to making sure its curriculum is up to date from a science perspective, math, including bringing in language programs into the district at the AP level. So for me, a balanced curriculum really equates to a well-rounded individual. Our young scholars that walk through our halls. It's making sure that that curriculum is developed in such a way that, yes, I'll agree with Mr. Dyer around making sure that our students have every opportunity to be inspired throughout the district, whether it's be through certain programs or arts, but including the voices of all of our educators is very important. We talk about our students being our number one target audience, but our teachers and all those in the field make a huge difference in making sure that decisions that are made throughout the district are relevant to what they're seeing at the field level. So that said, I mean, as a district, we develop and grow the character of our nation, and developing the balanced curriculum needs to have many voices, many lenses, and how we do that, including our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tobey, same question. What can you do to achieve balanced curriculum to Peoria students?
Yeah, when you asked that question, I had to chuckle myself because so one of my more significant endorsements for this campaign is actually my ex-wife. So we get along great, and she's out there campaigning for me. But you ask 6 people what a balanced curriculum is, you're going to get 7 opinions. And so when you ask that question, my ex-wife's version of a balanced curriculum is having a garden bed in every school, everybody take off their shoes and ground every morning before school starts. So there's a wider interpretation of that. But as far as the academics go, I do think that humanities and the arts are key in having a balanced curriculum. So my grandmother's a retired band director, and just stories after stories of how her instruction has benefited students not only just in band, but in other classes as well. And I think that we all need to focus on the arts and the humanities as much as the standard curriculums that we all know and sometimes hate to take. But I do think that having that balance and having the student be able to take a wide variety of those classes, my daughter loves picking her next classes for each semester. And it's always a debate back and forth as far as, well, should I take advanced dance or should I take child development? I don't know. And so it's a good problem to have that we have such a wide menu when it comes to classes. So as far as improving on that, I just look forward to getting on the board and working with Dr. Hernandez to actually go back to certain state standards. I think the resource-based standards sometimes got us a little bit off the path. I do think that there is room to have our state standards curriculum matched with a wide variety of resources to enable our teachers to have the ability to be interpretive of the lesson, to be able to deliver that in the way the student needs. So I think that empowering our teachers from that aspect would also help. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to hit, this is our 7th question of the day, and it goes to Mr. Dyer. School boards are supposed to be nonpartisan. What can you do to see this remains and support an atmosphere of collaboration as opposed to contention?
I have a history of leading with a nonpartisan stance and database decisions. I've had the wonderful opportunity of being part of the Peoria Youth Advisory Board for 4+ years, where I served as chair and where I also sat as the Peoria City Council Youth Liaison on the dais under both Mayor Carlett and Mayor Beck. So I have a number of years of experience in working in our city government and understanding how we can push Peoria forward for every single resident. I think it's crucial that we understand the values and needs and opportunities of every single person that we're here to serve. The PUSD has the wonderful opportunity of serving over 35,000 students, but including their families and the over 150,000 residents that reside here, it is crucial to ensure that we bring forward the issues that are important to them. And I come as a future governing board member with values, and that's how I will continue to vote. As a student in PUSD from kindergarten through 12th grade, as a future educator, and as a community leader in the city of Peoria for a number of years, I understand the needs and the wants and aspirations and how we move forward. Getting out of the political polarization and culture war issues that have shrouded PUSD for the past few years and genuinely moving forward into the next generation of leadership so that every student, every day, is prepared to shape tomorrow.
Thank you. Ms. Grimscheid, school boards are supposed to be nonpartisan. What can you do to see this remains and support an atmosphere of collaboration as opposed to contention?
Yeah, I think actually there's an easy answer to this. We focus on students. So when my students graduate, they always like to try to friend me on social media, and they're always shocked that to know that I have, family, I have hobbies, because, as a teacher, you're used to kind of keeping your personal life completely out of the classroom. The only things they know is that I'm married and I have kids. That's pretty much it. I think that what we can do as a school district and as a school board to make sure that we continue to focus on students is see what we have in common. The district does a really good job when it comes to things like the Citizens Bond and Override committees, essentially any committee, that they invite a variety of community members, of staff members, of families in the district to all participate. And it really doesn't matter what your political leanings are. We go in with the idea of let's do what's best for kids and let's work together to make that happen. In 2018 or 2019, I was really fortunate to be part of a group of physics teachers that we actually got legislation passed through the legislature. And we are really excited about the fact that we never got a no vote. And we were working with, 2018, if you remember, was the Red for Ed movement. We were working with people inside the legislature while there were educators outside. And to be able to do that in a nonpartisan manner meant that we focused on students. What's best for students? Let's do what's best for students. Let's leave everything else outside and focus on what can we do to help students do better.
Thank you. Ms. Proudfoot, what can you do to create an atmosphere of collaboration as opposed to contention?
One thing that I have learned this past year is how partisan this nonpartisan position unfortunately has become. Any given day on the internet, I'm usually attacked by one side or another side, and watching that fighting, it's uncomfortable and it's awful, but more than anything, it's a distraction. It's an absolute distraction from what the district has to do. We as community members, this 150,000 that Micah was referring to, we co-own this district together. Whether your kids are in schools or not, whether you have no kids, whatever your situation, we co-own this district together. As a governance model, this is not one person in charge. My vote is not more than Mr. Sandoval's vote. the way that a governance model is set up is it demands that you collaborate. The only way for that model to be successful is when you are more concerned with the issues than you are with being right. And so you have to bring yourself to that dais knowing that the students take precedence, that doing what's right for them has to come before anything else. And that is extremely hard to do, making the right choices regardless of the consequences. Well, you know, on my signs, I chose keep politics out because the politics is what's dividing our community. A divided community is not what is best for any of our children. It's not what is best for Peoria, for our city, for the economy, for our home values, for any of it. And so we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard of not willing to allow ourselves to be divided. The thing that has gone through my head time and time again on that dais is one nation under God, indivisible. We as citizens have to be indivisible, and we have to care more about doing what's right than we do about taking sides.
Thank you. Mr. Sandoval, what can you do to create an atmosphere of collaboration as opposed to contention?
Yeah, thank you for that question. You know, again, this is my second term on this governing board, and for 4 years, in the 2 terms, I served as the president for 4 consecutive years during some of our most contentious times. I think for me, it has always been about valuing and respecting all opinions and perspectives on this board and listening. You know, we have many ways for individuals to engage with the district. One of them is public comment in the boardroom. And, you know, again, we serve upwards of 150,000 to 200,000 individuals when you factor in average household size, all different perspectives, different stories. And for me, it makes me smarter to make sure that I understand and listen to all perspectives and where an individual is coming from and trying to stand in their shoes so I can make very informed and objective decisions and continue to stay curious, you know, without judgment. You know, one of the things that I do appreciate, you know, one of the, I guess, boards at the beginning of my tenure, you know, is when I was first elected to be the president of the governing board, but elected by an individual who we were from different parties, but that didn't matter. What mattered most is that we were focused on our students and the young lives that this district serves on a daily basis. So again, for me, it is about valuing all perspectives and opinions and doing so with civility, respect, and dignity.
Thank you. Mr. Tobey, same question. What can you do to create an atmosphere of collaboration as opposed to contention?
Yeah, to avoid being repetitive, because we're all almost in alignment, oddly enough, right? So we need to recognize the humanity within each other. And so I believe that all of us are made what's called B'Tselem Elohim, which means in the image of God, and recognizing that innate spark within everybody is going to command that respect. And so if you walk into those conversations, even if we disagree on certain topics, having that underlying respect going into that conversation or into that vote needs to be there. So I've had conversations with everybody up here, and I've been able to engage in my promises that if elected, I'll be able to work effectively with the people that end up on the dais, because I do believe that we're all made in the image of God, and that goes a long way with me. So as far as an individual candidate, so I am a vetted member of goodparty.org. It is a nonpartisan entity, organization that vets candidates for their nonpartisanship as far as local and state races. So that they provide resources for those types of candidates who are going into those fields, so that way it keeps it narrowly focused. So recognizing the humanity within each other, I think, is super important, and then just being willing to keep our students at the forefront of our minds. We need to focus on and love our students more than we oppose each other.
Thank you. Ms. Bowles, what can you do to create an atmosphere of collaboration as opposed to contention?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I was the one who recruited Jeff's ex-wife. I just had to put that out there. And it's kind of a funny story and kind of a fun story as well. And I come from a family of 14. I have 6 brothers and 7 sisters, so we got to get along, you know, you're brothers and sisters. And going back to the nonpartisan, if we could go back to our Constitution, we were really never meant to have more than one party. I'll leave that alone. Above all, we lead by example. We're adults. We should be adults in the room. I don't always do that, and I'll be very transparent in that because tensions get high, but I try to lead by example, and the reason why is simple. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, 8th question. Ms. Gimscheid, you're going to start this one off. The district has continued to deal with issues regarding access to facilities for transgender students. How would you urge the district to handle that issue?
Right, well, I will say that I am a fan of the current policy because it involves parents. And if we're talking about anything that has to do with any of our children, we always need to include their families. I think that there's some contention from the outside world that's being brought into our schools. My students aren't as concerned about bathroom use, about who's trying out for the sports team, than it seems like we are hearing on the news. I think that we need to let the kids lead in this. We can teach them compassion for one another. I know Mr. Toby said he sees a humanity in one another. We need to be doing that. That means that our cisgender and transgender students have the same humanity inside of them. And so they both need to be treated with respect. I think that when we have a situation where we have a student who is being honored by their parents, being honored by their family, telling their family who they truly are, then the school district has no right to step in and tell the families that they're wrong. They have no right to interfere with that parent's rights to make sure that their child has a safe and public education. So at school, and sometimes maybe the adults just need to get out of the way and let the kids tell us what's going on.
Thank you. Ms. Proudfit, the district has continued to deal with issues regarding access to facilities for transgender students. How would you urge the district to handle this issue?
So this is something that has been a deep frustration for me as a board member because I continue to see this become a political battle of gender identity. And we have to be very careful of what our role is in this boardroom. Whatever district policy we create or don't create, state law will supersede that and federal law will supersede that. Our job is to ensure that every single student has a safe and nurturing environment to come to school in. So I am sick to death of arguing the merits of different communities when our edict is already out there. We already know what we're supposed to do. So when I came on the board, that was one of the things immediately I was like, let's dig into the data of this. I will tell you the data of the district is transgender students are not what is making our bathrooms unsafe. The data just simply does not support that. I also am a religious educator within our district. I teach the high school kids, and I will tell you, I hear it all. Ms. Grimscheid can probably tell you the same being a high school teacher, but you hear it all. I know all that's happening on the campuses for the students that I teach. I think we need to be proactive about solutions for all people, and there is a way to create safety and privacy and dignity and integrity for every single student. And so rather than arguing against one group of students, why are we not creating more proactive solutions that protect the dignity of all people? And that is really where I have tried to focus my efforts.
Thank you. Mr. Sandoval, what can you do? I'm sorry. How would you urge the district to handle the transgender issue in bathrooms?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I think, for me, it's, we talk about collaboration and talking to all stakeholders, students, teachers, staff, families, which I continue to do. So, as we had this conversation maybe a year and a half ago, my decision to move the district forward, in its current policy of including families and the decision-making process was done with objectivity and being very informed. For me, I don't want anybody to ever feel that they're not cared for, or that they don't belong, in this district. One of the things that I did do is, move the district forward and taking a look at our facilities. I mean, as facilities are just as important as academics and everything else that we talked about earlier. How we can align our facilities with the shifting needs of our student population and taking data-driven, making data-driven decisions around that. And, so one of the things they are focused on and working on is a solution that, creates safe, supportive environments for all of our students, while mitigating, some of the other infractions, if you will, that we see, across the district, like vaping in restrooms and bullying. So certainly, proud of the district to continue to problem solve and take, research and data-driven decisions on from a facilities perspective as well, and glad to work with the district on moving that forward.
Thank you. Mr. Toby, same question, sorry. How would you deal with the district to handle the transgender issue?
So as far as the transgender issue, I agree that I think it's a less problem than what a lot of people are making it to be. However, it is a problem that still is coming up over and over and over again since 2020, since I've been coming to meetings. We've never resolved this issue about facility use, bathrooms, showers, locker rooms, and girls' sports. So the number one question that I got knocking doors, being at the election polls is, do you support boys and girls spaces? And the answer is no, I don't support boys and girls spaces. I think that they need to be separate. The law provides us that ability to keep things separate as long as they provide equal services. And that's actually Title IX, surprisingly or not. So that's why we have boys basketball and girls basketball. Otherwise, we would be in violation right from the get-go. So there are inherent differences too. And you've heard it tonight, listen to the students. Well, 170 plus girls at Liberty High School spoke loud and clear that they didn't want boys and girls facilities. And it's not just bathrooms, it's showers, it's locker rooms, and it's also in their sports. And there are a lot of issues with that, but the solution, I think, already exists in the 504 accommodation plan. I think it's something that where if a student is struggling with their gender identity, which is a very real issue, it's still in the DSM-4 and 5, it's still an issue that needs to be dealt with tenderly, recognizing the humanity in all those students with the 504 accommodation plan. So just as much as a parent can tell the district, hey, my child is this or my child is that, that is the district's role to have that accommodation. It's not, and it should not be foisted upon the other students to accommodate that. So as far as the 504 accommodation plan, that mechanism already exists, and that's what we need to rely on. It's already existing policy.
Thank you. Ms. Bowles, how would you urge the district to handle the transgender issue?
Having walked hundreds of doors, and many times not even asking really what their concerns are in the district, that has been the number one question to me. Do you support boys and girls bathrooms? The answer for me is 100% no. However, I will spearhead off what Mr. Toby said. Every child deserves respect and dignity. A 504 plan, that's an idea. I kind of like that idea. It will cause the district to have to put something in place to keep, both sides safe. Going back to Title IX, the rewrite, if you know Title IX was designed for originally for girls not to be sexually discriminated against in school. Then we went to college when Trump was in office. Then we went to Biden and Harris, rewrite of Title IX. So now sexual discrimination, and it's there. It became effective on August 1st, that it means what you identify as. Those are real concerns. Those are real concerns to parents. I am all for listening to students. I loved my students. They know that. I fought all the way to the district level. Some people are still even at the district level and will tell you that, for some of my students to be placed in the right programs. However, they are dependents for a reason. And I agree with Ms. Grimscheid. Parents need to be able to parent their children. And if parents are, part of that decision making, yeah, the school needs to come on board and support those students.
Thank you. Mr. Dyer, how would you urge the district to handle the transgender and bathroom issue?
I want to start off this conversation with recognizing that for the past few years, unfortunately, we've seen leaders in this district continuously attack some of our most marginalized of communities. And that's one of the main reasons that I got involved. is because our LGBTQ plus students are valid and they are real and they deserve their voices to be heard. But let's talk about the issue. The motto of the Peoria Unified School District is every student, every day, prepared to shape tomorrow. And that means every student who walks into our walls, no matter how they come at it. As a student leader, both at Ironwood High School, but also, as I've mentioned before, as chair of the Youth Advisory Board and City Council Youth Liaison, I led a number of discussions with students across the district when these conversations were going on, asking them, how do you feel about the current situations in the bathrooms, and how do you think it needs to be changed or bettered? Because those conversations are necessary to ensure that our community is listened to. And not once did I have a fellow classmate come to me and say that they're worried about transgender students using their facilities. We've heard it here. I've heard them mention the vaping. I've heard them mention the overcrowding during passing periods. Those are the real problems our students are facing. There was a solution from the district at Ironwood and Cactus High School, and I was able to be part, like I said, at the site council at Ironwood to test out how we would feel about improving the facilities there, opening up the restrooms, maintaining privacy for our students, but ensuring increased ADA accessibility, ensuring access to facilities, and improving the discipline problems that we have. And I was part of those conversations saying, is this a way that we can move forward? And many people agreed. Like I've said many times, we need to stop focusing on culture war issues and the politics and actually genuinely move forward for every student every day so that they can be prepared to shape tomorrow and look at every person who comes into our walls as a genuine human who deserves, as everyone does, access to the same facilities as we all do.
Thank you, Mr. Dyer. Nice work, candidates. Lots of really great perspectives here. There's one last question that I wanted to ask, and it's kind of broad, I guess, but one thing that hasn't been addressed is social work, mental health, psychologists, that sort of stuff. And I'm not sure, I guess the question, I mean, some people have good home lives, some children do not, which obviously facilitates the needs for things like social workers and things like that. So I'm just curious where you guys stand on social workers when in that need of mental health within the district. And I think that's Ms. Proudfit.
I'm grateful that I get to start with this one. This is a very hot button topic. If you follow the news, you probably have heard a lot about this. What a lot of people don't realize is 60% of our district is Title I, which means that we have a lot of diverse needs within our district. But in some of the South schools, we have families who have food scarcity, that have safety issues. I mean, sometimes living up north, I think people forget that there is a wide variety of needs across the district. I myself, having a son with autism, he had access to a lot of these services when he was in middle school and high school. I want to emphatically say there is always going to be a need for social workers within our school system. That is just a fact. It is part of how we serve our students so that they are able to get the education that they deserve. I do want to touch upon the vote that happened a few weeks ago. We need to make sure that when we are talking about wraparound services and when we are talking about these marginalized groups or critically it needs students, that we ensure that we are doing so in a way that provides stability and is more permanent solutions. And during that vote was trying to encourage that we come up with a permanent solution to some of these problems, which in my mind would mean allocating different funds to ensure that we are able to provide those services for our students. Also, social workers are wonderful, and there's a lot of other things that have been mentioned. They are not the beginning, middle, and end of the story. They are one piece of the puzzle, but we need to ensure that those social workers are able to stay in place, and we increase academic guidance counselors, and we have reading interventionists and behavior specialists, because again, just doing social workers is not going to solve the entirety of the problem.
Thank you. Mr. Sandoval, same thing. If you could just speak on the subject of social work, mental health.
Sure. I think, I talked about earlier the longevity of Peoria Unified serving the city of Peoria community. And it's Peoria Unified, since its inception, has always been open to everybody. And it continues to problem solve and adapt and integrate resources and programs to meet students where they are. And it continues to make research-driven, data-driven decisions on behalf of all the students that it serves. And this is no different. You know, if our students aren't in the right mindset to learn, they will not be successful in the classroom. And our social workers are a part of that village that ensures that Peoria Unified upholds its promise, again, around public education, which is every student, every day, prepared to shape tomorrow. Thank you.
Mr. Toby, social work and mental health.
Yeah, so from the very beginning, I've just expected that the district be in compliance with what the law says. And if the direction of the district is we want to incorporate social workers as part of our safety team, as part of our mental health team, that they need to be licensed by the state. And we have 33 social workers and only 9 of them are licensed. I don't think a lot of parents know that the majority of our social workers are not licensed by the state to practice mental health. I think that's a liability for the district. And I think that it also protects the students, it protects the district, as well as the social worker themselves as far as being licensed. We've had a lot of anecdotal, one-off incidents that obviously some have made the news and others have not, but it's a real issue when you're talking about it. You know, it's against the law. And so if that's the direction we want to go, we need to ensure that we're in compliance with that. And right now we're not. So that's what my challenge to the district would be, is to incorporate that licensure for our counselors and our social workers in order to have that extra layer of protection and to follow the law. Very simple.
Thank you. Ms. Bowles, same thing, social work, mental health.
Thank you. Being behavior specialist background and psychology degree and human service degree, and ran 2 statewide social service agencies after leaving the school district for 9 years. Very familiar with what social workers do, very grateful for them. I have to, again, piggyback off what Mr. Toby said, and that is, never have I ever, whether I was hiring, we flew in a licensed social worker just to do practicum hours with some of our, you know, students that were coming out of the universities. I'm very familiar with that, and it has its place. However, there's something that many don't understand in the community, and that is the Department of Education has given a certificate to social workers, nowhere else, just the schools, and that allows them to do social work just as a license, as Mr. Toby said, social worker. I do have a problem with that. The things that kids are facing, 100%, I think we need counselors in schools. I think we need licensed counselors in schools. I did some of that work when I was in the district. Social workers can, I think one of them said on social media, one of them brought a mattress to a bedroom for a kid. I understand that, I really do. I've been in families' homes when they lost their children and they needed to move, and you know, that's important. Food's important, and they have their place. Psychotherapy, not their place. And if we have 30%, which is, if you look at data, because I've heard that over and over, we had to create 30% in every classroom that have a need for a social worker in order to get this upcoming grant approved. If you have 30% that need a social worker, you got more going on in your classroom than I don't even know what to say about that. Counseling background, I have to speak to this because it's close to my heart. Any counselor out there, I don't care if when I was a teenager and I had a good friend, her sister committed suicide, that when you talk about suicide over and over and over and over, I remember them pulling us in saying, you know, we can talk about this in here, but teenagers are emotional. Let's not talk about this outside of here. And I'll just leave that alone because my time is up.
Thank you. Mr. Dyer.
I want to address something that's kind of been brought up, but many people have started paying attention to the district because of the vote that took place about a month ago on the social work grant. And sitting in that meeting, it was incredibly unfortunate to see that our board decided to put away $275,000 from the federal government in order to further crucial and necessary services for our students. And the weeks that came after that, we saw that it impacted 1,800 students. And it was then that social workers, members of the community came together and we went to the next board meeting, and it was a beautiful thing. We wore hearts for the students who were impacted by that vote. And fortunately, the district found money elsewhere to be able to provide those services. But what did we lose? Because there's not just $275,000 sitting in the coffers of our budget. We lost something, and that's unfortunate. But let's get on to why mental health is important. It provides necessary services to our students who are struggling with a number of different things. If a student comes to the classroom hungry, they cannot learn. If a student comes to the classroom with difficulties at home, they cannot learn. And so we have to ensure that our students' mental health, their social emotional development is intact to get them the crucial skills they need to further on in their future. As chair of the Youth Advisory Board, we led a poll for an entire year. We got over 1,000 responses. And the number one issue that young people told me that the city of Peoria and the district is lacking is mental health resources. This is something our students need. This is something our students are asking for, and they're not being listened to. It's amazing we have 33 plus social workers on our campuses. I truly believe that that is not enough for over 35,000 young lives who are struggling on a day-to-day basis. So I absolutely support continuing to invest in necessary resources so our students live happy and full lives.
Thank you. Ms. Grimscheid.
Yeah, during that meeting where the board voted on the mental health grant extension, Dr. Summers said something that resonates with me as a teacher. He was talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and he brought up essentially, you can't, if students don't have their needs met, then they can't learn in the classroom. And I think this question about social workers, about mental health supports in our schools really goes back to our teacher retention. We're taking up with the wrong people if we're worried about the licensing or the certification of our social workers. That needs to go to the State Board of Education if we're really worried about that. But I'm going to say that if we got rid of social workers, if students are struggling in class, if they're struggling emotionally, that falls on me. A teacher is, as a teacher, I am not qualified. And you know what? Most of the time I'm teaching 36 kids. I do not have the time to help this one kid who's really, really struggling and ignore the 35 others. So I'm trying to juggle everything to make sure this kid gets what they need so we continue learning, but I'm also keeping the 35 others. So if we're trying to retain our teachers, we need to give them supports. And part of that is making sure that our students have the mental health supports that they need to meet Maslow's hierarchy of needs, to feel safe at school, to know that they're cared for, to know that they're dealing with a lot of very adult problems. I have students facing homelessness, students facing income insecurity. You better believe that if they know that if their parent is struggling with finding a job or maintaining a job, they know, and it's trickling over to what they experience at school. And so having someone who I can refer them to, who can then reach out to parents, who can ask, what can I do to help, is invaluable. And that's going to take that off of my plate and make sure that I can continue to do what's best for all 36 of my children.
Thank you, candidates. This completes the question and answer portion of the forum. And so we're going to give the 1 minute conclusion for all the candidates. Since we started with Ms. Bowles, we'll start with Jeff Toby at the end, please.
Yes, thank you for everybody who is here and supporting and online. We appreciate your time. As I say some to my kids, the more you sit on your tushy, the less you keep in the mushy. So hopefully you got something, you got your questions answered. If not, please go to votetoby.org, read about my policy issues, email me, text me, my phone number's on the website. But I hope that you learned something and the difference, and hopefully if you were on the fence, that some of our answers gave you more clarity in that. So my promise to you is, as the public safety candidate, the only candidate endorsed by the police departments, is that security is at the forefront of my mind, both physical and otherwise. And with the forefront of AI technology, we have a lot of things to accomplish in the regards to safety of our students and of our staff. So my ask is that if you have any more questions, please get a hold of me. But I appreciate your support and thank you for your vote.
Mr. Sandoval.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again, everybody, for attending this evening. It is important to be informed. It continues to be an honor to sit in the seat as a governing board member for the 4th largest district in our state, serving 35+ thousand young lives, 4,000 employees and their families. For me, I mean, I'll continue to stay very engaged, informed, and stay curious without judgment. My big focus is really to continue to nurture an environment of care and inspiration so that really all stakeholders can thrive and contribute to our overall success. So again, my name is David Sandoval, running to retain my seat on the governing board, and thank you again for attending.
Ms. Proudfit.
I continue to be impressed by the Peoria community. I think I referenced the 28 people that applied for the position that I have. We have great candidates. The turnout we have at the meetings, we have a community that is deeply vested in education. And so now it's time to turn all of our passion into results. The time is now to come together, to work together, to problem solve, to move our district forward. I want to be the board member that sits up here and tells you there are so many incredible things happening within our district. We are at schools all the time. We have some of the best educators and admin and programs. And yes, there is a lot for us to work on, but we can't work on any of that until we decide that we're ready to work together. Our opinions and our values mean nothing unless we are able to get results through the finish line of this board. And so whoever ends up on the board, I would just implore that really having the spirit of collaboration to continue to go to our stakeholders. I hope that I get to continue to work for the district after this election season. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Grimscheid.
Again, I want to thank everyone for being here. I know that, 5 o'clock on a Tuesday evening is not exactly sometimes the easiest to get to the district office. If I'm elected, I will be the teacher perspective on the board. We hear a lot about what's going on in classrooms. I know what's going on in classrooms. I do that every day. I'm exhausted right now, and it's not even 7 o'clock from dealing with teenagers all day long. But I think having that classroom teacher perspective on the board can be a very valuable thing for us. We need someone who understands the current climate in our schools, what our students really need, what families are asking teachers for, because families ask teachers and they ask the district two different things sometimes. And so I want to make sure that we do have that teacher perspective. If anyone wants to know more about me, my website is melissag4pusd.com, and you're welcome to reach out to me. I'm happy to talk about all things education. I could do that all day long.
Thank you. Mr. Dyer.
Thank you to each and every person who's here in person and online who engaged in this conversation tonight. 1 year ago today, I was sitting in the classroom at Ironwood High School. As a student who's attended PUSD from kindergarten to the 12th grade, I understand the needs and the wants and the aspirations of our #1 constituent, students. As a future educator, I know what it takes for PUSD to retain and recruit the next generation of teachers. As someone who's been born and raised in the beautiful city of Peoria, I know what our community needs. So I hope we can put away the political division and the culture wars that have shrouded PUSD for the number of years in the past. And we can continue to move forward and innovate and allow for the next generation of leaders to push PUSD forward. So I hope if you have any questions, visit micahforpeoria.com and vote Micah Dyer by November 5th. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Bowles.
Hi, thank you. Thank you to everyone online. I have a ton of family watching. Unfortunately, I'm going to be critiqued after this, but hey, that's what we do, right? I vote Bowles. If you want to know any more, feel free to call me. My number's on there. Ballots are out. They're going out, and people are voting. We need 2 on this board that are conservative, and we need to make policy on this board. That's the elephant in the room, and I'm going to speak to that. I represent academic excellence, and that is what I will fight for. Keeping students safe is also what I will fight for. But you're the constituents, and that's the reason I'm on the board, is to represent you and your voice on the school board. I will say votebowles.com is my website. I think I covered everything, and I will end with this. I am not a politician. I'm actually a patriot. Politicians, they run after seats. I run after generations. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, candidates. We reached the end. I'm sorry we all have to leave now. No, really, we need to give the candidates a round of applause because you got a lot of information here. I hope this has allowed everybody to be a little bit more well-informed when they go to the ballot box. And as you said, if you have more questions, you can always contact them. I just want to give one last shout out, one last take the moment to plug my company, Independent News Media. For those that don't know, I&I is a nonprofit with about 20 publications throughout the valley, including a daily newspaper, a lifestyle magazine. We have no shareholders, no dividends are paid, and after all taxes, profits are reinvested into the company, our mission. We survive mainly on subscriptions. If you are interested in my coverage of Peoria, go to yourvalley.net, click on the Peoria tab, and you will get all kinds of Peoria coverage there, from not only the elections to things to do and everything. So go out and subscribe to Peoria Independent if you liked what you saw here. And again, thank you guys for coming out, and good luck at the ballot box. Have a great night.